64. Civil Donatism. Judgments and opinions by all men everywhere presuppose a moral and religious perspective which determines the nature of factuality. Thus, Otto Scott gives us a grisly report on the reign of terror in the French Revolution and the mass murders and executions. J.M. Thompson, however, quoted Robespierre favourably. Immorality is the basis of despotism. The essence of republicanism is virtue. The revolution is a transition from the regime of crime to the regime of justice. Given this definition of the old regime as crime, all its adherents were criminals and their murder was justice. This perspective has governed all subsequent revolutionary regimes. J.M. Thompson spoke of the Jacobin regime of 1793-4 as commonly but unfairly called the Reign of Terror. The many, many tens of millions of victims of this and more recent terrors, as in Russia, Spain, China, Cambodia and elsewhere, are not important to men who define all dissidents as criminals. Another example, the 2nd century BC apocryphal Jewish Jubilees, supposedly a special revelation to Moses, had some unusual ideas about the sacredness of the Sabbath and moral behaviour thereon. We are told, "Every man who will profane this day, who will lie with his wife, let him die." In every culture, certain things are sacrosanct. They are beyond criticism, and their sacrosanctness is basic to society. In the modern era, the sacrosanct realm has increasingly been the political, the state. The state, having usurped the title of sovereignty, has seen its claims to a sacred status as valid. A major battle in the early church was over the issue of donatism. For the Donatists, the validity of the sacraments depended on the character of the priest. If the priest proved to be a man who, when faced with death at the hands of Rome, denied the faith, then all baptisms, communions and marriages performed by him were held to be invalid. If, however, as the Catholic party held, the validity rested not on the man, but on the triune God and the Church's essential faithfulness to him, then the failure of the individual pastor could not nullify the sacraments. In brief, the validity of the acts rested on their faithfulness to the Lord, not on the perpetual faithfulness of the priest. As in so many other areas, the state adopted this perspective. The emperor or the king might be old, infirm, incompetent, and also very evil. All the same, his acts retained their full validity. Sir Edward Coke called the body politic the king a mystical body. Kantorowicz noted, "It is evident that the doctrine of theology and canon law, teaching that the Church and the Christian society in general was a corpus mysticum, the head of which is Christ, has been transferred by the jurists from the theological sphere to that of the state, the head of which is the king." The result of such thinking was civil donatism. The state became a Catholic church, irrespective of the faith or character of the king. The king, by assuming the throne, assumed thereby a divine character. This was a divinity by grace, not by nature. As a result, Kantorowicz noted, "The axiom of deificatio, of becoming God as opposed to being God, brought about in the royal Christology of AD 1100 a certain affinity with Nestorian and adoptionist formulae. There were many other defects, to say the least, in the royal theology, but its anti-donatism was not one of them. The authority of the state is not nullified by the corrupt practices of certain bureaucrats or officials. Similarly, the authority of a father or of a mother is not invalidated because of his or her mistakes. Infallibility is not a human nor an institutional attribute. Church and state alike can err. If we invalidate authorities on the evidence of any sin or error, we guarantee anarchy. It is necessary to respect authorities even when they are wrong and to seek redress or change in lawful ways. To be intolerant of errors and sins in authorities is to posit ourselves as the unerring judges and juries. In an important study, Thomas Molnar has studied the relationship between politics and the sacred. He states that, until recently, all civil power had a sacred derivation, meaning thereby a source which was in some sense supernatural. Modern political theory has its own realm of the sacred, history in the Hegelian sense. The naturalistic Geist, or spirit, incarnates itself in civil orders, culminating in the dictatorship of the proletariat for Marx. Implicit in Molnar's perspective, and rightly so, is the triune God of Scripture as the sacred, and God as his own mediator in Jesus Christ. In other religions, many persons in various ways mediate the sacred. As Molnar points out, the modern view has led to desacralization. Total desacralization is reached when the former mediators, whether priests or painters, no longer perceive themselves in their original function, but instead as self-contained ends. When the mediators turn into individual sources of meaning, artists become a sacred caste and speak a language understandable only to themselves and a coterie of adepts. For modern man, we witness, in short, the replacement of the transcendent order by the future. Men like Richard Neuhaus in The Naked Public Square recognize a loss of the sacred. Molnar points out, but their strategy is a rationalistic substitute for the orthodox Christian faith. Neither a humanistic stratagem nor a non-Christian view of the sacred will give us a valid answer. It is the biblical faith and the triune God of Scripture that alone can return us to a true doctrine of the sacred, the holy. A very important aspect of the loss of the sacred has been the decline of interest in typology. In some evangelical circles, typology still has a place, but a trivial one. The various colours and details of the tabernacle in Exodus are seen as types. However, as R.T. France noted, the basic idea behind typology is that the principles of God's working are constant. This means that history is a seamless garment. There is a total meaning behind all events, so that nothing is by chance and nothing is mindless. The purpose of all things may be and usually is beyond our grasp, but the fact that all things come from God and express His sovereign will is knowable. It cannot be otherwise if God is God. This total determination is clearly set forth in Zechariah chapter 10, verse 4. Out of him came forth the corner, out of him the nail, out of him the battle bow, out of him every oppressor together. Morality requires a universe of total meaning. As Cornelius Van Til observed, if man could press one button which would enable him to step outside God's jurisdiction for a moment, he would keep his finger on that button continually. No such button exists. We live totally in God's creation of total meaning, and hence of total accountability and responsibility. The sacred, the triune God, is thus also the source of all morality and law. The modern state has limited and desacralized life by declaring Christianity and the triune God to be matters of private concern and private allegiance. The realm of public life, seen by political theologians as the realm of the state, is a neutral realm. So speak the civil theologians of the U.S. Supreme Court. By removing the state from under God and from a responsibility to God's moral law, the civil theologians have thereby removed the realm of politics from the realm of meaning into the realm of pragmatism. In one of John Lofton's series, Lofton's Law, he makes the point that pragmatism doesn't work. It does not work because pragmatism posits a meaningless world in which no criteria exists. There is then no standard of right and wrong, moral and immoral, nor that which works and that which does not work, because purpose and meaning have been negated. It is not surprising that a major step taken to facilitate human organ transplants was to redefine what constitutes death. Since then, a few have begun to argue that a working definition of death is difficult. The decline of meaning is the decline of morality and law. It is also the breakdown of authority. St. Ambrose said concerning rulers, "The ordering of authority is from God, the desire for power from the devil. There is therefore no fault in the office, but in the minister. God's ordination cannot offend, but the action of the administrator can." Ambrose often enough fought against the abuse of imperial power, but he also denied the validity of civil donatism and upheld the authority of the state. The decline of belief that the state must be as much under God's law and authority as the Church has led to a decline in the state's authority. Civil donatism is very prevalent, and men feel that their dissent is sufficient ground for a refusal to submit to the civil power. The modern state increasingly claims total power and, at the same time, sees increasingly the decay of its authority. Having removed itself from under the authority of God, it has lost authority. More and more, authority is replaced with coercion and terror